A wealthy and successful man named Marcos visits a men's entertainment venue. There, he can choose any woman he desires. This time, Marcos wants something different. He meets Mercedes, an attractive woman, and something surprising happens between them. The next day, Marcos returns to his mansion. He was greeted by his housekeeper, who asked about his son, Daniel. However, Daniel was not home. Meanwhile, Marcos consulted his personal doctor about his health. Soon after, Daniel returned home and greeted his father. Marcos had been living alone since his wife's death. He then spoke with his housekeeper, telling her of his intention to marry Mercedes, a woman he had recently met. The wedding took place at the church, and Daniel witnessed it from a distance. Perhaps Daniel was still struggling to let go of his mother's memory and couldn't accept his father marrying another woman. Shortly after, Marcos and Mercedes arrived. Her presence would undoubtedly change their family life. Marcos introduced Mercedes to Daniel, who still seemed to struggle with her presence. Gradually, however, Daniel began to get used to Mercedes being in the house. One day, he called her to his room, where she saw him cleaning himself. Fortunately, nothing unwanted happened. Shortly after, Marcos returned home in severe pain. He collapsed near the stairs, and Daniel helped him lie down in the bedroom immediately. During this time, Mercedes held Daniel's hand. Was this a sign? The doctor advised Marcos to rest for a long time, as his condition was still unstable. Nevertheless, Marcos wanted to be intimate with Mercedes. Although she was weak, Mercedes had no choice but to comply with his wishes. Meanwhile, Daniel looked restless in his room. Perhaps it was because of Mercedes's touch earlier. He was so restless that he couldn't sleep that night and saw Mercedes in the kitchen. It seemed the first battle was over. Perhaps a second battle would occur, but the arrival of the housekeeper delayed it. In his old age, Marcos had prepared for everything, including his inheritance and who would run his company after his death. He wanted to explain this to Mercedes, but before he could, they embraced.
Querida Mercedes.
When Mercedes got ready and returned, she found Marcos lying on the floor, eyes open, no longer breathing. He was declared dead. Since his death, Mercedes has controlled the house and Marcos's company. However, Daniel also has rights to it. One day, Daniel left to finish his studies and said goodbye to Mercedes. She promised to wait for him. Mercedes has since become one of the most important people in Marcos's company. She meets with various business partners, one of whom is Alvaro. Alvaro is a painter and Marcos's business partner. Since their introduction, Mercedes has grown close to Alvaro. She even invited him to dinner at her house. Despite the housekeeper's warning not to bring men into the house carelessly, Mercedes wanted to let Alvaro in. First, they discussed business matters. Then, to relax, they took a walk on the edge of the forest. Alvaro had also brought along his painting supplies to paint Mercedes. However, Mercedes couldn't stay still, so Alvaro had a hard time. Finally, Alvaro became annoyed and invited Mercedes to have sex instead. When they returned, the housekeeper saw Mercedes kissing Alvaro in the car. It turned out that Daniel had already returned home by then. He was angry with Mercedes. How dare she bring another man into her home? He refused to speak to her. Instead, he went to his father's company to speak with Alvaro. He learned that Alvaro liked painting. Daniel offered to be Alvaro's model. From then on, Alvaro began to show his true nature. Upon closer inspection, it seemed that Alvaro was gay. After becoming closer with Alvaro, Daniel invited him to have dinner at home with Mercedes. When Alvaro returned home, Mercedes took the opportunity to talk to Daniel. They discussed their relationship issues. Daniel was upset and asked, "Why is Mercedes getting close to Alvaro?" She said she would wait for him until he returned. Mercedes explained that she felt Daniel was still too young for her, and that Alvaro was the kind of man she considered suitable. Growing more upset, Daniel eventually slapped her. He was certain that Alvaro wasn't the right choice for her. In fact, Daniel would reveal Alvaro's true nature. One day, Daniel returned to Alvaro's house wearing only his underwear. Shortly after, Mercedes arrived secretly. She saw Alvaro preparing to hurt Daniel. It was so severe that it disgusted Mercedes. Daniel and Mercedes planned this. What Daniel proved turned out to be true. Alvaro, unable to bear the shame and unsure of what to do, took his own life along with the paintings. Daniel now fully inherits his father's company. Meanwhile, his housekeeper decides to quit her job and leave. Daniel and Mercedes are now free to do whatever they want, including having intimate relations.